What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I'm your host, Zach, with my co host, Josh. Unfortunately, Mike will not be able to join us today. He's out of town on some 4th of July vacation stuff. So hopefully he's living it up in Michigan or wherever he's at. But we'll hold it down while he's gone. Today, we're going to cover the NBA draft that happened a couple weeks ago and a good amount of free agency that's happened in the NBA as well. We've had a bunch of big guys sign places like Paul George and I guess Kelly Oubre, both with the 76ers. So we'll talk about a lot more. DeMar DeRozan got signed and traded, but you want to take us off with the NBA draft?
I will, and I'll at least mention every pick. I'm not going to go in depth for a lot of them, but we'll start with Risacher, which I think it's Risacher, right? Zaccarie Risacher. I think
I
that's how
think
you
it
say it.
is. I think it is.
It's
Yeah.
Risacher, yeah, because it's French, yeah. So I guess that makes sense. But I definitely called him Zaccarie Risacher on the last pod. I just want to put that out there now. And then on draft night, I heard them say his name, and I was like, oh, it probably makes a little bit more sense. But um, everybody's hating on this pick for Atlanta. We've talked about a ton of times on here how this draft isn't the best draft and maybe one of the worst drafts in recent memory. And I think he's a guy that has a lot of potential. He's a wing. He has good size. He's a good athlete. I think whenever you draft a guy like that, where you're going to draft a guy based on athleticism, you have to take a guy on a forward position. And I don't think it's the worst pick ever at small forward. And I think if Alex Sarr would have worked out with them, he probably would have went one and said he goes two to Washington. Interesting, because then they go and we'll talk about it here in a bit, Zach, but they go and they get Jonas Valanciunas. So interesting little pair there. Reed Sheppard. I'll just go through the first 10 and then I'll pass it to you and then we'll skim through the rest of these bullshit ones. But not all bullshit ones. But Reed Sheppard goes three to Houston. As you were saying before we started recording, it looks like he's going to come off the bench, which is interesting. I think will be a good piece to control the bench unit. It's tough to have a rookie doing that, but I think we see a similar thing possibly with the number 4 pick here, Stephon Castle in San Antonio, with them signing Chris Paul. And then, of course, Houston having Fred VanVleet. But I think eventually both of these guys will be starting. They're both two players that are well rounded. Castle needs to be able to shoot it better, but Shepard's a great defender. He's a great playmaker. He's a great shooter. He's not the best at attacking the rim, but he does everything else so well that you can get away with it. So I think he's a great pick. I love Castle of the Spurs. I think he's going to be a fantastic player. My first real problem of the draft is at 5 with the Pistons taking Ron Holland. I hate that pick for them. They needed rim protection and shooting, and he is the opposite of that. He's not a great shooter. He's a good driver from the wing. He has good size, but he's not what the Pistons needed. And there's other guys here like Matas Buzelis, who went to the Bulls at 11, who I thought for sure was going to the Pistons. He's the perfect fit. I knew he was going to be there at 5. He falls all the way to 11. I don't understand that for Holland. Saloon went to the Hornets. I'm not very up to date on him. He's like the one um, foreign prospect out of this top group that I really don't know shit about. But from what I've seen, a lot of people think it is a reach for him at 6. Clingan to Portland at 7. Love this pick. Clingan is a great rim protector. He's good on offense from the center position. He's, of course, 7 foot tall. This basically means DeAndre Ayton, you're gone or you're playing the 4,
Probably.
which
No, ew,
which
no.
I was always in as a Suns fan, I was always in the what is it? The minority of people who think that DeAndre Ayton might be a natural 4. He shot the ball well from 3 when he shot it. He just never shot it in Phoenix. If they want to run him at the 4, I don't think it will be the worst thing ever, but he's just not playing good basketball right now. I think this is kind of the end of the DeAndre Ayton era in Portland. I think I mean, he's still got this massive contract, so I don't know what the hell they're going to do with him. 8, as a Kentucky fan, so happy Rob Dillingham got to go to a team like Minnesota. As a Suns fan, I'm devastated because I think this is a great pick for Minnesota. I think he's a perfect complement to Ant. He's a great ball handler. He can attack the rim well. He's a good shooter. What the Timberwolves needed the most this year, they were a great defensive team. They had Ant, but those non-Ant minutes, they needed guys who could play make and who could actually get their own bucket. Cat's amazing, but he can't get his own bucket. Rob Dillingham can get his own bucket. He's going to be the perfect player to play when Ant isn't on the court. I think they'll play a lot together, but I think he's going to be one of the best offensive options for them when he's not on the court. 9, Edie. I think it's kind of a reach at 9, but I think Edie's going to be a decent NBA player. He had 14 and 15 in the summer league last night. He was great. And Cody
And four
Williams
blocks.
and 4 blocks. Yeah, he was phenomenal. Um, And then at 10, Cody Williams, good athlete from Colorado to Utah. I didn't realize Utah has like all of the cap space remaining in the
Right.
NBA right now. Um, I feel like they might be building something, and I really trust Danny Ainge. I don't love the pick of Cody Williams. I wasn't the biggest fan of him. He's an upside pick, but oh damn, never mind. I thought France just scored. I got pissed. But um, yeah, I think it's an okay pick for them.
Yeah, kind of starting from the top, or at least 1, 2, and 6. Three French guys going in the top six. I mean, we haven't seen a draft dominated by foreign players like this one. Sure, maybe Zaccarie Risacher. Is that what it is?
Risacher,
Him, Risacher,
Risacher.
him, Sar, and Saloon. I mean, I think you could argue only one of those guys probably could have gone top five, but the other two, I mean, it all depends on what you are looking for in a player. But like you mentioned, Reed Sheppard, I'm excited for his role within the Rockets. I'm very curious to see how his performance, if he does perform well, how they're going to operate with Jalen Green, because they will probably they play similar roles within an offense in terms of they're better off ball, but they can still somewhat initiate to an extent. Reed Sheppard definitely a lot better, but we also don't know how his game's going to translate to the NBA because we haven't seen him play yet. But Rockets, they've got a lot of top four, top five picks stacked up from the last few years. They're going to have to start paying people coming up. So someone's going to be an odd man out. And I'm very curious to see who they decide it's going to be, or if they just dip into the luxury tax and pay everybody that they can. Stephon Castle, I like the pick, but with Dillingham on the board and how I thought Dillingham was, I think that would have been a great pick as well at 4 or 8, but I'll get to that in a second. Castle, he's going to be a great defender. He's going to be a great guy to sit behind Chris Paul. And I know you mentioned it a little bit. Chris Paul signing with the Spurs. I mean, it's a great signing. He's gonna be able to get Wemby and other guys to their spots and be able to just teach those guys how to play the game the right way and just teach them how to win, because he's done a good amount of winning in his career. Like we saw not too long ago in OKC, they were kind of just written off as a team that was like okay, but then he took them to the playoffs in the bubble year. And then the Suns, he was a nice veteran piece for them. He was a good third star that could score at times and was just a great veteran leader. And honestly, that's just what he and that's what he is. At this point in his career, he's just going to be a vet who maybe a little bit of ring chasing after this year. I don't expect him to stay in San Antonio for long, if he's even playing after this year, because he's what, 38, 39. But
Chris
he
Paul.
signed for like 1 year. Yeah,
I think he's 39, yeah. Or maybe 30. Yeah, you're
39. Yeah,
right. He's
but he's
somewhere in there. He's very young. He's just younger than LeBron.
yeah,
He's going to be 40.
right. But he signed for 1 year, 11 million, I think it was. That's just off the top of my head. I don't remember if it's true.
Something
But
like that.
Castle can learn a lot from him, especially in initiating offense and just being able to help out your teammates in the best way that you can. Ron Holland, like you mentioned, the
Before you move
Pistons
on really
have
quick, I just
had
wanted to mention about the Spurs. Dude, this team
yeah,
is going to be so fucking good defensively. Like, we'll talk about the
yeah.
Harrison Barnes move in a bit. Harrison Barnes, for his age, is a pretty good wing defender. Vassell, we know, is a great defender. Wemby's the best defender in the league. Chris Paul is a good defender for his age. Castle's a great defender. This team is going to be pretty good on defense. And I honestly, like, I truly think they're going to be in the play-in. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but they're going to be in the play-in, in my opinion.
I For me, it all depends on Wemby. And that sounds kind of crazy, but it's not based on what his talent is, it's how much he plays. So last year, I don't even know what he was playing. I think he was playing under like 30 minutes or right around 30 minutes a game. And for a defensive anchor of his ability, you really need him to play like 35, 36 minutes a game. So you just force other teams to not score on the interior.
Which
So,
makes
I
his
mean,
production even more insane. Which
right.
I mean, I don't know. I if they want to compete, I think they'll play him those minutes, and if they think they have a
Oh,
chance to compete, I
100%.
will. But if Chris Paul goes down early, I don't think they have much incentive to run Wemby 35 minutes a game. Just doesn't make sense to
This
me.
team really could. I mean, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but they could be like the Thunder from 4 or 5 years ago, where Chris Paul goes to a team. It's kind of just like, oh, he's just going there for as like a trade piece, just for like a contract filler. But no, it's very similar to that in terms of the Spurs are a very young team for the most part. They've got a lot of young talent, and Chris Paul can be a veteran leader who can lead them to the playoffs or the play-in in this situation. But yeah, they can be an insanely good defensive team, and they're maybe like one elite like 2 guard or 3 guard away from maybe being like a top 7 or sixth team in the West, maybe.
I think their
Maybe I'm just
ceiling's
really
higher than the
high on
Thunder.
Wemby.
I think their long-term ceiling's higher than the Thunder, even though the Thunder have all those picks. I think the Spurs, like, I just have so much belief in Victor Wembanyama. I think we're like 2, 3 years out from him being the best player in the league, honestly. I really think that. And all they have to do is sign somebody who's like an elite two to Wemby. And
Right.
I mean, it's a wrap. I mean, imagine like I don't even know what's talking, like a Kyrie with that team, or like a Kyrie type player with that team. You even
Right.
look forward. I'm trying to think of who could maybe be on the move here
I'm just
soon.
trying to think of free agents coming up,
Yeah, that's
and
what I'm trying to think
there's
of
not too
too.
many because Jalen Brown just got extended. I know he's not like Kyrie or a two uh necessarily. He's been playing more of a three with the Celtics, but I don't know. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, Paul George would have been interesting just because Paul George is productive on offense. Sure, his numbers are a little bit down from when he was in his late 20s and like a few years ago, but he's still an extremely talented player who is still average on the defensive side and can provide offense. So
I'm trying to
again, it
get
all
to
depends on
find this. You can keep going.
it
I'm
all
I'm trying to
depends
get to find this.
on right. It's just it all depends on how much Wemby's going to play because like you said, if Chris Paul's done, they just lack that veteran leadership. Then they're not going to try and put too much wear and tear on the tires of Wemby because my my concern with him was the same as it was with Chet when he was coming into the league. Yeah, we love these unicorn big men who can handle the rock a little bit, facilitate, defend at the rim, but they're a little bit on the skinnier side. So they got to either put on muscle or just not be asked to play 35, 40 minutes a game where you're just going to get beat up so much. So if they want to play him a little bit less and make sure they don't risk as much injury, then that's fine because respectfully to all the Spurs fans and the Spurs players out there, you're not contending for a title this year. You could have a good play-in tournament game or two with Wemby dropping like a 40 and 20 game with like 5 or 6 blocks, but I don't think you're winning a best of 7 against whoever ends up being the number 1 in the West, which most likely would be the Thunder, given what they've added so far this offseason, which we'll get into a little bit of that later. But they're not there yet, but if they add like if Chris Paul decides to retire or leaves, then if they add like not necessarily Lonzo Ball, but they probably could for cheap because
I think they could too. There's some interesting options in 2025 as I'm looking now. There's a
yeah,
lot of long shots, a lot of player options, but here, I mean, one that I don't think is going to happen, but it is a player option. Jalen Brunson. If anything happens with the Knicks this year, I don't see that happening. Um, Jimmy
you
Butler
got
as
too
a
many
player
friends there.
option. Yeah, Jimmy
Jimmy
Butler
would be
maybe with a
interesting.
player option. Jamal Murray if the Nuggets end up not being as good because they were cheap and didn't re-sign KCP. That's an option.
I think part of that was because they're making room for Jamal to get a
I
pretty
agree.
damn good
That's an
extension.
option. Another one. Kyrie, like I said, player option he's going to have in
Right.
2025, restricted. But if he doesn't sign a massive extension, playing on a horrible team, Cade Cunningham, possible option in
I thought
2025.
he just signed an extension.
Did he? I have him on here as
I
he's going to be restricted in
I could have
2025,
sworn I just saw something
unless he just
today.
signed one and I didn't see. But that's an option. But outside of that, there's a couple long shots. But
Yeah,
uh,
1248 today.
oh,
5 year
today
200. Yeah, 5 year
oh I missed that.
224 million that could become worth as much as 269
Oh well,
million.
cross that one off the list then. I was prepping for my first show today then. But regardless, there's options. They can even if it's not next year. I think they're going to
Right.
get somebody. Somebody's going to want to play with Wemby.
And with Wemby being so young, they have time before they have to go all in and push all the chips to the center of the table and like just try and get as much out of them. They can continue to play him 25, 27 minutes a game for the next 2 or 3 years. Make sure he doesn't do too much. He'll win a depoy or two over the next 3 years because he's just fucking insane. And then he's just going to get better this year on the offensive end because he's going to have a guy in Chris Paul who's going to help him get to his spots. He's going to know how to hit him. There's been so many clips circulating recently about Wemby being just having a mismatch, like damn near a foot over like multiple guys and just not getting the ball in the post because it's Vassell or Tyus Jones just trying to ISO on a big man because he got a switch, but the better switch is down low and
Yeah.
they just they didn't see it. So Chris Paul will know how to seek out those mismatches and get Wemby into those spots. He wouldn't have joined the Spurs unless him and honestly Popovich had a plan to better Wemby for the next decade plus. So kind of skipping a couple picks. Donovan Clingan to the Blazers, like you said, fantastic pick. I'm surprised he fell to 7. I think he would have been a great pick at 5 because I mean the Pistons took a swing at Wiseman back in 2020. That was the Anthony Edwards draft, I think, and LaMelo.
Yep.
And then Wiseman didn't work out, and now they kind of need someone because Isaiah Stewart's got his anger issues that we've seen time and again. But Clingan, I mean, you mocked it in I think it was a few weeks ago in one of your mock drafts. You said Clingan could have gone number 1, and I don't disagree with you. He has the defensive anchor ability to be a top number 1 pick, but the offensive upside, I guess you could kind of ask a little bit more. But if you're getting a Rudy Gobert type where you're winning 2, 3, 4 defensive player of the years and getting countless all NBA defensive first and second teams, that's a damn good pick. And now to Dillingham, I think him going to the Spurs would have been so fun. It would have been a great duo to see Dillingham and Wemby for just cheap for the next 2, 3, 4 years. But again, Timberwolves, wow, what a trade. They traded what, a middle schooler for him, a 2031 unprotected first, and I think something else. But man, Rob was easily the best just shot creator, bucket getter in the entire draft class, in my opinion. And we saw multiple times at Kentucky. Both of us did. We were Kentucky fans, but I don't know. I mean, yeah,
Shout out
but
Mark Pope.
it's love the guy.
I understand not taking him
But
and Castle, but I don't know. The trade was.
I can understand because you took Castle. I can understand not wanting to double down, but I don't know. I mean, imagine if they went Edie though, Edie and Wemby. Let Wemby run the floor. That'd be crazy.
That would be insane.
That would be absurd. But Rob to the Timberwolves, he can be the 6th man there. Is Conley still their point guard right now, or is he
probably
free agent or something?
I assume. No, he's on the team still.
I think he is.
He is. I think they're going to play Rob at backup. I think he's going to be a 6th man.
And that just makes a lot of sense. You mentioned it. Rob can run the offense when Ant isn't on the court. He can facilitate for his teammates and create his own shot. He can be another backcourt scorer when Ant isn't on the floor, which I think is huge because they were kind of missing that in the playoffs. When Ant was off, and Cat was off especially, they didn't have anybody in the backcourt to go and get their own shot or just alleviate the pressure because you could just throw your best guard defender at Ant and all you had to do was just sit in your 2-3 zone because Gobert wasn't scoring anything outside of 5, 6, 7 feet. And Cat, he just wasn't on his game in the conference finals against the Mavs. Or was it the Mavs?
Yes, it was. Neither was Ant. Ant really wasn't on his game either.
I'm confusing them.
They were gas.
Right, but I'm saying like they were both off their game, and because they're both off their game, you can just sit back in a 2-3 zone because Gobert can't do anything outside.
Yeah.
So adding Rob is huge for not only now, but like 5 years down the line because you're probably going to keep relatively the same core. Edie at 9. I mean, you mentioned it 14, 15, and 4 in his first ever game. And there was stuff that doesn't even show up on the stat sheet. He was setting some real hard screens in the high pick and roll, just creating a lot of separation, letting his guards get downhill. And wait until that's Ja Morant in mid-February. Like that's going to be crazy. Ja Morant will probably be in the MVP conversation, partially because we will have missed his electric game from this year because of the suspension and the injury, and just that being pushed right back into our faces the second he gets back on the floor. I think there's going to be a little bit of a narrative drive there, but he's still going to average like 28, 7, and like 3 probably. And he's going to be in the MVP conversation for sure. But Edie, he's going to be great. And Cody Williams, like you said, athletic wing, who leaves a little bit to be desired from the 3-point line, but the tools are somewhat there. But the Jazz, like you said, they got a lot of cap space. Maybe in a couple years, maybe they pull off a Clippers move from a few years ago where they bring in 2 superstars on max contracts, 1 sign, 1 trade, because they've got the assets. And I think earlier today I saw that they were looking for a 1st-round pick for Walker Kessler. So I don't know if they're going to get that, but I mean, that's definitely a good piece for another team out there to go and get if they really aren't set on him. So that kind of rounds out the top 10.
Yeah, I hope we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk free agency, but that's a huge piece. Somebody needs to trade for Walker Kessler if he's available. He's a great player. Suns, trade the 2031 first and Nurk. Get it done. But we'll move into, I'm not going to go through every pick anymore. I'm just going to pick the notable ones from here on out after the top 10. But Before that, really quick, just because we're talking draft and college, it's just so funny to me to watch Arkansas on social media now that they have Cal like flex all the top picks. Like they were flexing Reed and Rob going in the top 10. They're flexing Book and AD being on the Team USA team. So that's just funny to me to see how they're getting lit up on
It's
social
fair
media for
enough.
that.
They
Is
get
it?
them. They can just for a little bit, but they're not going to have guys like they're not going to have an Anthony Davis or Devin Booker coming into the draft anytime soon.
I guess, but when it's your
From
rival, I
Arkansas,
feel
at
like it's
least.
it's tough to rep one of your rivals' success. But I guess teach
Oh,
their
it's
own.
so weird, but I mean, ride the coattails as long as you can. You got to
I
respect
guess
that a little bit.
I guess so. They finally have some notoriety, but um, like I said, Buzelis, I love that pick for the Bulls. I think he's a very underrated prospect. He's a decent defender. He has really good length. Honestly, I'd say he's a good defender. He has great length. He can attack the rim. He can shoot the ball. I think he's a great player. Topic going to OKC. Love that. He was projected to maybe be a top 5 pick before he got hurt. I don't even think he's going to play this year. I think he has like a shoulder or a knee injury or something.
Nope.
What
It
is
was
it?
something with the lower body, and I think it's knee, but he's already ruled
Sunset.
out
Yeah.
done for the year.
Yeah. So he's not playing, but I think next year he could be pretty good. I actually really like him as a prospect and go into a team like OKC. Perfect for him. Um, let's see which other ones were notable. Khalil Ware from Indiana went to the Heat at 15. Kind of a bit of a earlier than I thought he was going to be, but I think he's going to be a pretty good prospect. McCain from Duke going 16 to Philly. Although he's very tough to watch online. I think he's a hell of a player. I think he's going to be pretty good on the Sixers team as a fifth option or fourth option, whatever he ends up being. Connect falls all the way to the Lakers at 17. I think he struggles defensively. I think he struggles with shot selection. I think that's going to be a problem in the league, but I think he's a good scorer, and I think if he could settle into a role in the NBA, he could be a decent player. What else here do I want to talk about? Suns traded the 22nd pick to the Nuggets, I believe, at 28. Yeah. Nuggets took Deron Holmes from Dayton. Pretty good player. I think he's a good post player. I think he could be a good addition to Denver. Minnesota doubles back, takes another, maybe the two most elite scorers, pure scorers in the draft, as they get Terrence Shannon from Illinois, who has been ruled. I'm not going to go into the case, but some of the shit that came out of that was crazy. But he is an innocent man. He's a free man, and he went 27 to the Timberwolves. Another elite scorer going to one of the best defensive teams in the league. And I will say about Rob really quickly, I thought of this when you were talking. Rob's biggest weakness, I mean, he's not the best playmaker, but his biggest weakness is just being a small guard. He doesn't have a big wingspan. He's not great defensively, even though he does try really hard on defense. That he went to a team that he doesn't need to be a good defender because if he gets blown by, he has two of the
Right.
best or just some of the best rim protectors in the league at with Gobert, and then he has a great wing defender in Jaden
Jaden
McDaniels.
McDaniels.
Yes, not Jay. I almost said Jalen, his brother, but I think him and Tara Shannon are great fits for the Timberwolves. Collier goes 29 to the Jazz. He was the number 1 overall recruit this year. Went to USC, didn't play well. Still goes late in the draft, late first round here. Ryan Dunn goes 28 to the Suns. He like doesn't have a jumper, but he's the best defender in the draft, and the Suns really struggled defensively, especially on the wing last year. So I think he's actually a really good pick. He's I wanted the Suns to take him at 22, so I'm happy they got him at 28. But yeah, I think that's about all I got here for the rest of the draft. Let me see. Second rounders. Filipowski went to Utah. You want to talk about
Right.
that, or you want to just ignore
I
that?
mean, didn't he go like what 0 for 4, 0 for
Yeah,
I don't know. He went 0 for in his first game in like 17 minutes. I think I saw that today.
so that's something. Tyler Kolek goes to I don't remember what team he even went to because his draft board is so messed up. Um,
Right.
what team did he go to? This pick belongs to the Knicks. He went to the Knicks. I like Kolek a lot. I think he's one of the best playmakers in the draft at the point guard spot. I thought there was a chance he goes in the first round. He doesn't. Osei Ighodaro from Marquette goes in the second round to the Suns. I think it's a good rim protector pick for them. Um, Reeves, Antonio
I
Reeves
was
goes
just about to say.
47 to the Magic. Great shooter, great scorer. He was really able to improve his driving game and his floater game last season at Kentucky. He's a veteran. He's a little bit on the older side, but the Magic struggled so much offensively this year. I think he's a good pick. And I'll say it. I don't think Bronny's a bad pick. I think people are really, really getting mad at Bronny and they're getting mad at the Lakers and they're getting mad at LeBron. And I understand that, especially coming off of him I mean, you have the collection of things. You have him hiring the coach basically, and then denying that he hired the coach. You have him drafting his son, and then his son being like, "Yeah, it had nothing to do with my dad." You have Rich Paul calling all these other teams not named the Sons of the Lakers and saying don't draft him or he's going to Australia. You have LeBron saying he's going to take a pay cut to bring in Klay Thompson. They can't bring in Klay Thompson. He says, "Fuck you, I'm signing the max anyways." Signs the max. I understand why people are mad at LeBron. I get that. There is so often, and I think it's a lot of the problem is a lot of people don't watch college basketball and they don't understand high school recruits. And I understand why they don't get that. When a guy's a high school recruit and he goes to college and isn't good, but he was a high school recruit and he has a high name, he get a lot of those players get drafted. Look at Chris Livingston from Kentucky a couple of years ago. He was a super high draft pick. He had a couple of good games, wasn't really good at Kentucky. He still goes in the second round, even though he probably shouldn't have been drafted because one, he's a high recruit, and two, he signed to Rich Paul. I understand he got drafted to the Lakers because he's LeBron's son. I still think Bronny gets drafted in the second round, regardless. And I think people are kind of throwing a fit over nothing.
I think he definitely could have gone a little bit earlier, especially if that Rich Paul stuff, Bronny going to Australia, if it's anything but Suns and Lakers drafting him. But I don't know. But kind of circling back to the first round, because you went on not on a tangent, but you were rolling, so I didn't want to stop you. But my Bulls taking Montas Buzelis. I think it's a good value pick for what we thought he was going to be. There were a lot of outlets prior to like this previous NBA season who thought he could have been like a top 5 pick, but there were also a lot of guys within this draft class, like you mentioned, Topic to the Thunder. He could have been a top 5 pick if he wasn't injured. But there were a lot of guys that were in contention for top 5, top 3 picks because of the weakness at the top of this draft class. So I think, like you said, he's got great length. He's a good defender. He could work on his handle a little bit and creating off the dribble. He only shot like 27% from 3 in the G League last year, which I kind of hoped he was shooting like 32, 34% at the minimum. But that's something that could be fixed at the next level. The shot form and the mechanics are there. It's just the execution and just getting into his right spots. And
That was a
if
team
Lonzo
issue.
plays, I mean, maybe.
Team
Yeah,
sucks
and
so bad.
honestly, and that's why
Him
they're
and Ron
shutting down
Howland
the.
had to take every shot.
Yeah, that's why they're shutting down the G League Ignite.
Yeah.
It was a fun experiment, but it failed.
Yeah, sadly.
But I mean, a guy like Lonzo Ball, we were talking about with maybe he goes to the Spurs or somewhere else or something for cheap because of his abilities and the fact that he was hurt for a little while. And we don't know how he's going to look when he comes back, if he comes back. If Lonzo plays this year, he can help Montes get to his right spots. He knows how to hit guys in stride. I mean, we saw it with the Bulls and at the beginning of the 21-22 season when they were sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference before the All-Star break. Lonzo was a big reason why they had success because he knew how to facilitate correctly. He could shoot the ball at 40% clip or better, and he was an excellent defender. So the Bulls, they've got a lot of guys under 24 years old. They traded for Giddey. They've got Kobe White, who was in the running for most improved player. They've got Patrick Williams, who's coming off this injury. I mean, Levine, he's going to be hitting 30 soon, but he's still an elite scorer. They've got guys that they can build a future around. I mean, I'm hoping they tank for flag. I really do. But right now, they've got young guys that if a couple of them progress ahead of what they're projected to be and a couple of them are just on schedule, they might be a force to be reckoned with in the 2030s. I mean, that sounds really bad, but in the NBA, when guys are drafted so young at 19, 20 years old, you have to wait that time before they hit their prime. So for the Bulls, the future's bleak, but hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel. I kind of liked some of the moves they've done so far, but touched on it, Topic, he is a great pickup. He's just going to take a good amount of the year to rehab. And then at the end of the season, I don't think they're going to thrust him into a role towards the end of the season when seeding and in the playoffs, when championships are on the line, but he'll be able to practice with the team, play against Shea, play against Caruso, play with both of them as well, and just learn their tendencies and learn how to play the game. That development's going to be huge. Chet did a little bit of that last year when he missed, I think he played in one summer league game or not even one. And then he got hurt in like a Drew League game or something. I have no idea. He hurt his knee and then he missed all of his rookie season. And then he came back, one of the better anchors in the league, probably a top 5 defensive center in the league in terms of just impact, and was able to stretch the floor, play make a little bit, was great next to Shea and J Dub. So maybe Topic can be a nice backup one coming off the bench. I mean, in 2025, that could definitely be a possibility. Jared McCain, like you said, he's not going to be a superstar right away, but and the off court stuff is a little cringe, but he has potential to be a very solid contributor on really any team. Can act, like you said, iffy defender, shot selection's iffy, but the tools are there. The Lakers, I mean, they've got a couple young. I think they've only got what, two guys over 30 on their roster, and it's AD and Bron.
Something like
I
that, yeah. Something like that.
So they've got a little bit of a youth movement there outside of Bron and AD, and I think if you ask for vets, those are two guys that you couldn't really ask for much better ones. Yeah, and after him, I don't really see much else until, like you mentioned, Terrence Shannon. I mean, yeah, there was all that off court stuff, but still great player. He did a lot in March Madness, if I'm not mistaken. He was putting up damn near 30 a game for a majority of the games, keeping Illinois in those games. Isaiah Collier, he was potentially a top 12 pick leading up to the draft, but falling all the way to 29. I mean, we talked about it before. The Jazz might be building something. So another guy out of USC. I mean, they had a couple guys who were of note in terms of name wise. And then I got to go to the next page for the second round.
What's
You
going on
mentioned
in
Philip.
Utah?
You got to chill with the old Windhorse. But
It's my goat.
yeah, there's not really much else. I mean, the Lakers drafted this one guy, but I just can't remember his name.
Yeah,
But
something like that.
regardless, Bronny, regardless of what you think of like nepotism or if he's only there because of Rich Paul and LeBron and JJ Redick or whatever, he he was underwhelming in his first year of college. Yes, he wasn't super efficient. He's when he got measured at the combine, he was 3 inches shorter than what we anticipated. And he's not the most physically imposing individual, but that doesn't mean he still can't be a good player. He can be an above average defender at the next level. If he can become a better facilitator, if he can learn how to put the ball in the hoop a little bit better from beyond the arc, create his own shot a little bit better, he can be a good player. He's going to be more of a project. He's not going to go out and be chucking lobs to his dad minute one because he's going to be running the starting one or anything, but he'll get minutes off the bench sparingly probably, but I think his best option would be G League, run shit down there for a year or two, and then come up for your dad's retirement tour and then make all those fun memories rather than get your head chewed off, head blown off, your ass chewed out, whatever, by the national media for an entire year because you're still adapting when your dad is a year or two from retiring and you're making him look bad or whatever. So I don't have much else to say about that. So if we want to just roll right into free agency, I think it's solid.
Yeah, I just have one more thing to say about Bronny. I'm gonna come to his defense again. He for college kids, especially freshmen, the summer months between July, August, even September for those college kids is so important when you're in your camp and you're building, especially when it's one and dones and you're playing with guys like Collier who are brand new too. It's a brand new team. If you miss a lot of that time, it's going to be very hard to be successful in the season. We see it over and over and over again, which is another reason why I think people's lack of college basketball knowledge is a big reason why he's getting a lot of hate right now. The kid had a heart attack during the time that he is supposed to be learning everything he learned past the high school level. He had a heart attack and was not able to participate during that time. That is so much of the reason why he only averaged 5 points a game. That and being on a competitive, not a competitive team, but a team with a lot of talent.
Competitive backcourt, honestly.
Yes, and it's I don't know. I think people just need to cut the kid some slack. He's an NBA. He's a player who is a good defender and is a good passer and is a good shooter, which are the three most important assets for a guard in the in the NBA right now. So I've been talking too
You be
much.
tearing that up in the WNBA.
I've been betting too much on the WNBA. It's messing with my brain, but the NBA, he is the model of what you want in a draft pick. So I think he's going to be all right. But moving on, talking about some free agency. So much shit has happened. A lot of shit has happened. So as I go through this list and I talk about it, please interrupt me and say what you have to say about said players. We already talked about LeBron and him faking his pay cut and then taking a max deal. Maxey resigns Philly, pretty expected. I don't think anybody didn't expect that. We'll go right into DeMar, the sign and trade with the Kings, where the Spurs were in it too. They got Harrison Barnes because the Bulls didn't want to take on any big contracts, which makes sense. That's what they're doing right now is trying to get rid of those big contracts. Harrison Barnes, I already said I love the fit for him in San Antonio. DeMar, the fit is interesting with the Kings. I think he's going to be good. Do I think this project or takes the Kings and makes them a 5 or 6 seed into a 1 or 2 seed? No. And I think a lot of DeMar's success, although I still think he's a very good player, I still think he's an all-star caliber player. I think a lot of his statistical success in Chicago was due to the fact that he didn't really have anybody who was also going to be able to take a ton of points away from him. I think he'll benefit a lot from being able to play with Sabonis. And then the Bulls get back what, 2 second round picks
Two
and
second round picks, Chris Duarte and
Duarte.
Cash.
Duarte.
So
I like Duarte a
welcome to the
lot.
Bulls cash. Woo!
Yeah, yeah. Of course, Reinsdorf had to get him some cash in that deal. The
Yeah,
second
it's
round
just
picks
going
are
right in his
whatever.
pocket.
I mean, I think you'll agree, but Bulls should have sure done whatever they could to get rid of DeMar and Levine the past 2 deadlines. They couldn't do that, and now they end up with the second round pick in Duarte. I like Duarte, but yeah, you could have gotten more.
You definitely could have, but I think you would have had to do it, like you said, a deadline or two ago. And it's hard to try and do that because in 2022, you were still in middle of the road. You were trying to get healthy. Levine's been dealing with injuries. The back half of 21, he was where he missed even a playoff game, and he was dealing with that knee injury. And then he missed half of this year, and then the year before that, he was in and out of the lineup. Lonzo hasn't played since 21. So the front office was kind of just like, once we get healthy, we can fill out roster spots with cheap veterans, mid-level exception deals, and run it back with relatively the same core that we were at the top of the East with. When in reality, if one player is holding together your entire team, like Lonzo, and he's not even like a superstar, like an Anthony Davis or a Giannis or a Jokic or whatever. Like Giannis or not Giannis, Lonzo, he's a very good player. He plays great for what he's asked to do, great facilitator, great shooter, great defender, but he's not a superstar. So if one role player is what's holding your team together, you should probably blow it up. And they just did it 2 years too late. And now they've been going around trying to attach a first round pick to Levine's contract. Incredibly terrible move if they decide to do that. I think I saw something today or yesterday about them trying to attach 2 second rounders to Levine to try and dump his contract. I'm gonna kind of go on a little rant about Levine in a second, but trying to
Utah.
attaching picks to try and offload a contract when you're trying to enter a rebuild in which you need picks to acquire young talent, just whether it is second round picks, it just takes swings at players. Because Jokic was a second round pick. He was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. Now he's the best player in the damn NBA. You never know what these second round picks can become. And it's kind of like the same thing in the NFL. Like, I bet you the Rams, when they drafted Puka Nacua in the 5th round, they were like, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be our cup replacement. He's going to be a triple crown threat in like 3 or 4 years. No, they were drafting him because he showed some promising stuff on tape. And they're like, okay, he could be a nice complementary piece. It's the same thing in the NBA. You draft guys for what they can project into rather than what they're able to do now. So, and now with Levine, I tweeted this out a few days ago. Levine is turning into one of those guys who I'm kind of defending with my life. Like, I'm at the top of the hill. I'm ready to die on it. I'm fate like, I don't remember what movie it was, but it's like that old war movie where the guy's with the sword and the shield in the field and he's facing like a mob with pitchforks. He's ready
Kill
to take
Bill.
them all on, and it's I have no
It's not
idea.
Kill Bill, but
But
similar
oh
concept.
well, I have no idea what movie it was. I can picture the graphic right now, but I'm willing to defend Levine like that. At his best, when he's healthy, he is a 26, 27 point per game player on 50, 40, 85 shooting splits. He is an elite 3 level scorer, slightly below average defender at best, who has been riddled with lower body injuries that have impacted his explosiveness, which, to be said, if he had participated in the dunk contest like the last 3 or 4 years, he probably would have won them all because he is that athletic, even with those knee injuries, and he's just a crazy good scorer. The fit with DeMar wasn't perfect, and it wasn't great either. It was good at its very best. You need to pair Levine with, I don't know, not necessarily Jokic or Luka in general, but you need to place them with a passer so he can be a secondary or tertiary scorer where he can do his thing without being relied on to take the biggest shots in the world, which DeMar kind of did. He took a few against the Knicks. He did it against the Pacers and the Wizards on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day back in 22. Love you, DeMar. We'll miss you forever. But the fit just isn't there. Vooch needs to be gone. But Levine, LaVine is worth a first, maybe 2 first rounders for sure. If you replace Paul George with LaVine, I think you can still argue that they are roughly the same contender that they are with Paul George. Just because LaVine is able to score on all 3 levels, and if you let LaVine be a third option, that's probably the best third option in the entire NBA. Maybe that's me just being crazy biased, but I've seen what he can do when he's at his best. He's so damn good. And the narrative that he's just a bad basketball player and that the 40 million a year that he's making because of that extension after the 2021 season is a bad contract. No, that's right now it's looking like it's a bad contract because he's not playing, but you can't control injuries. At the time, you pay a guy who's scoring 27 a game. You pay that guy. You pay him for sure. You don't just let him walk for nothing. So the narrative that you have to attach picks to him because his contract is so bad is so false. The fact that people are saying that he's a bad player and not worth trading for, I think it's such a bad narrative because he's an incredible player. Not saying he's top 10, not saying he's top 15, but at his best, he's definitely a top 25 player in the NBA who can impact winning positively with how he scores and how he can draw in a defense and just go off for 40 more than the average NBA player.
What I'll say about the LaVine thing, I think having to attach a first round pick to him is bullshit. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's a Bulls suggestion. I think that's what they're hearing from other teams who don't want to take on, which I do. That's a point. I agree with a lot of what you said. I disagree with a lot of what you said as well. I do think it's not a good contract. I do think he's heavily overpaid. I think he's a fantastic scorer at all 3 levels. I agree with that. But I will give something that you know and love. I will bring up the eye test here. LaVine in on the current situation he's in, I think he's a good player for the Bulls. I think he can score a ton of points for the Bulls. I think he can be fairly efficient for the Bulls. I don't think he's the best in situational basketball. I think he takes a lot of shots where, like, oh, well, yeah, you're a great scorer. You can get away with taking shots like that. But should you be taking that shot in this moment or on a 10-0 run and you didn't score any of the points? It was all DeMar, and then you chuck a 3 from the line and don't even get close. That is a problem that I think LaVine has. And I think that with his contract is a reason why teams want a pick paired with him. I don't think there's any chance the Bulls will give a first round pick with him. I think that would be insane. And I don't think any team actually expects them to do that. Do I think it would be a bad trade for the Bulls if they offloaded his contract and gave up 2 second-round picks in 2030? No. I think that would be a good idea. I don't think
I agree with that.
You don't trade any first-round picks. You can't trade any first-round picks.
No.
Worst case scenario, you keep LaVine. But the problem is, if you can't find a trade for LaVine and you can't find a trade for Vooch and you keep both of them, they're not bad enough players where you're going to be in the top 5. Especially when you have guys like, I think Giddey can be a winning basketball player sometimes. I think Buzelis is going to have a good rookie year. The problem is you can't be as good as you're probably going to be if you hold on to them, so you kind of need to trade them. So the Bulls are kind of in an impossible spot, in my opinion. I don't know what you do.
I completely agree with you. I think you are exactly correct. I think they need to be shopping Vooch way harder than what it feels like they are. I think the trade for him was fun at the time. It was an okay fit, but then once you started playing competitive basketball and you get to the playoffs, he just wasn't playing winning ball. He's not a good rim protector, which is what you need in the playoffs. And then last year he shot probably a career worst, like sub 30% from 3. I think he was like 26 or 27% as well. And my whole point with LaVine that I meant to get to that I kind of just went off on a tangent of my own brain. I think best case scenario for the Bulls is let LaVine just go out there this year, be the number 1 option, let him score a shit ton of points, let him average 27, 28, 30 points a game this year. It'll be similar to what Bradley Beal did with the Wizards like a year or 2 before he was traded. He'll average a shit ton of points. He'll get his stock back up. He'll play a bunch of games. He'll look like a really good player, which I think he is, but he's not going to be a number 1 option. But when you're on a bad team and you're taking all the shots, sure, he'll take like 20 shots a game and he'll score 30 points on like 50%. 35 and like 85 probably this year. So let him get his value back up, trade him at the deadline.
I think that's the play. I think
that just has to be the play. Just trade him to like I don't know.
They hate the
What's
deadline.
Reinsdorf gonna do? What's Arturis gonna do? What's the front office gonna do? I have no idea. If I were in the front office, I would try and offload Vooch right now. Let Sticks run the starting center and just let the young guys get run. I'd try and trade Lonzo for a second or two just because I love the guy.
Forgot
Let
y'all
him go
got
play
Sticks.
successful. Just
I
let
forgot.
Lonzo go play winning basketball somewhere else because he knows how to play ball. Um, Trade Vooch for whatever you can get. You need to offload that contract. Let Matas Buzelis start at the 3. So your starting lineup is Kobe, Zach, Matas, Paul, and then Sticks. And then just I don't know. Or go Giddy, Caruso, Levine,
Caruso.
Paul, Sticks. Caruso's on the Thunder.
You said Caruso there. You said Giddy
Did
Caruso.
I?
Yeah, that's how I was.
Kobe.
Yeah. I was confused. I was like, what the hell?
Giddy,
Like,
Kobe.
I have bad news, bro.
Like, wait, what are you saying? But yeah, you could run out a starting lineup with Levine being basically your only like 25 point per game scorer. Let Kobe go out and get 20 a game because we know he's capable of doing it. He dropped what technically isn't a career high in the play-in game against the Hawks, but God, was he so good. I'm gonna go back and watch those highlights after we're done recording. But you just let your starting lineup be Levine and then a bunch of other guys who are just gonna let him take a majority of the shots, build up his capital, his stock, trade him at the deadline to like, I don't know, maybe sentence him to death in Charlotte. Let him and LaMelo go play together for a little bit. Maybe to Indy, let him be another scorer aside Tyrese Halliburton. I think that would be an interesting fit because Hallie's a damn good passer. I'd say Dallas, but I don't think they have the cap space, nor would they want to dip into the luxury tax or trade picks for
They
him.
can.
But I think, I forgot they got Clay too, but we'll get into that
Yeah.
in a little bit. But he'd be a very interesting option if they didn't have Clay. But yeah, I mean, you got to trade him somewhere where he can be where he only has to be a good second option, or he can be a great third option.
Yep, I
So
agree. And we'll move on here. But yeah, I think that's the option for the Bulls. I think you keep him, try to trade him at the deadline. Because then your scenarios are either one, you keep him, he has a good season, trade him at the deadline. He could have a horrible season and you weren't going to get anything from him anyways. So that's whatever. He could get hurt and then his value doesn't get that much worse than it already is, to be honest, if he has no value.
his contract isn't even that bad though, like right now, because he's got this year, next year, like 40 million a year, and then he's got a player option.
Yeah. I
So he'll
mean,
probably opt out and go ring chase.
the problem is if he ends up being good this season and you guys don't trade him at the deadline and then your team ends up being the 11th, 12th pick again, then it's like, I mean, that's just nothing you can do about that. It's an organizational issue. But yeah, we'll move on here. Paul George, you kind of touched on it. I'm not high on Paul George or Zach LaVine, but he's a good enough defender. I think he's overrated on defense. I don't think he's much of a winning basketball player. He gets hurt a lot, but so does Embiid. So at the end of the day, you can't blame Philly for adding talent. I don't have much to say about this one. They added talent. I'm not the biggest on Paul George. I don't think they're going to be an NBA championship team because of the health concerns. But I mean, there's no negatives from this spending money, anyways.
I think it's an A. Like if I had to grade it, I give it an A. Just because it's good for both Embiid and Paul George, because both of them are going to get less wear and tear on themselves as they're getting older. And Paul George gets to be a third option on a team. So that's the probably the best big three in the league in terms of how valuable your third option is. So Maxi, we saw what he can do. He's super young. He can definitely just be the high motor guy. Embiid, he's going to be your anchor down low. He'll get you 25 a night. Paul George, he'll get you 20, but he'll also play average defense. I know you said that you're not very high on him, but he's still an okay defender. It's not like he's a cone out there.
No, he's. I think he's still a plus defender. I just think people make him seem like he's like this lockdown defender, and I feel like that's kind of
Oh no,
crazy.
he's no Kawhi.
Yeah,
Not at all.
Kawhi's no Kawhi anymore either. But
Nah. I say Kawhi just for like the name, I guess.
yeah. Siakam resigns, Bridges resigns, Klay Thompson, as you teased a second ago, went to Dallas. Um, Personally, I don't understand the move for Dallas. I understand wanting more shooting. I don't understand thinking that rolling out Luka and Kyrie and Klay Thompson is going to be good defensively. Klay Thompson is I can confidently say not a plus defender. I wouldn't even put him in an average defender anymore, especially with the injuries. Um, I don't understand this move. I think it was time for Clay to move on from Golden State, and I think it's fine for Golden State. I don't really understand the move for Dallas.
Honestly, I don't think they were thinking much of like defense because you're replacing Derrick Jones Jr., who is a threat on the interior and a plus defender, with Klay Thompson when your biggest issue last year was relying on a Derrick Jones Jr., a PJ Washington to knock down 3, 4, 5 threes a game for
Yeah.
you each. And I mean, PJ did that in the Thunder series, and that's probably why they won that series. But you replace 5, 6, 7 3-point attempts for PJ with 5, 6, 7 for Clay. Sure, he was like what 0 for 10 in the play-in game, but let's not forget that Klay Thompson's still one of the best shooters of all time. He's still very capable of dropping 30 on like 5 dribbles every so often. So I think this is an okay signing. You are completely right defensively. They're probably going to be a struggle to watch defensively on the perimeter. But if they're trying to get perimeter shooting, there's not much of a better option you could have gotten in Clay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. But at the same time, the reason they made the finals last year isn't because they were great offensively. It was because they were so great defensively in the playoffs up until they weren't in the finals. But um yeah, I don't know. I think this is definitely I understand your point of you'd rather Klay Thompson take 7 threes than PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. I get that. But at the same time, Luka and Kyrie were so above their pay grade defensively in the playoffs to get to the finals, and you just put more and more pressure on them, which takes less and less ball handling and dribbling out of the equation, which I think overall is not going to be good for them. But I mean, I understand why Dallas fans are happy. I mean, you got talent at any point, you're going to be
Oh
happy.
yeah.
But I just don't understand the fit for Dallas, in my opinion. But um, Tobias Harris signs with the Pistons. That doesn't mean much to me. They're a non-competitive team. Yeah, have fun with that, I guess. Um, he loves playing for red, white, and blue teams. We can say that pretty confidently. Um, James Harden resigns with LA. I don't know much about that. Do you?
I mean, it was a 2-year, $70 million contract,
Yeah,
35 AAV, and player option for the second year. So Clippers, they could be in hell real soon
yeah.
because Kawhi, he's barely playing. Paul George is gone for nothing, and now Harden might leave if the Clippers are just in the toilet. So I don't know. You mortgaged your future to the Thunder for Paul George, and you gave a bunch of money to Kawhi. Now you're sitting in purgatory if Harden decides to leave after you trade for him too.
I fucking hate the Clippers, but um, and I think that they did everything they could. I do not blame them actually, even though I love Shea and I cannot stand Paul George. I do not blame them for making that trade. I don't blame them for signing Kawhi. I think they had a fantastic bench. They were one of the deeper teams in the NBA in the past 3 years with having top superstar level talent. The problem is none of those guys could stay on the court, and it was just a failed experiment for that reason. You also couldn't let Paul George and Harden walk for nothing and ride with a guy that doesn't play as your primary everything. So I understand why they re-signed Harden, I guess. Even though I'm not the biggest on Harden, I think you just couldn't lose them both. Um, let's see. Malik Monk back to the Kings. I love that for them. Got to keep him and D
That was
Fox
cheap. It was a
together.
cheap deal too.
Yeah,
It
he
was
was
real
willing.
good.
Makes me think maybe he had some sort of inclination of the Derozan interest. Um, Oubre back to the Sixers.
Or he's
Oh,
just a big fan of the beam.
yeah, Obre's a big fan of the beam. Yeah, I think we already spoke about OG and Anunoby re-signing on the last one. I'm pretty sure we spoke about the Knicks and making all those moves. As I keep going down this list of points per game, guys that are available, we talked about before. Gary Trent Jr. I'm high on him. He's a good shooter. He's got good size at the point guard spot. Your Javante Green also still available after averaging 12.2 a game. I didn't understand he averaged that many this year, but
A good amount of it was he didn't play for. I'm trying to remember where he was before he came back to us. He only played like 20 something games with us, and he scored like 20. Yeah, he didn't play a lot this year, so that's
makes
kind of why
sense.
it's semi-inflated.
hmm Um,
But big electricity player if you're looking for a
yeah,
spark off the
I like
bench.
Javante Green. We spoke about Valanciunas. Do you have anything to say about Valanciunas to the Kings?
Kings or
Or no,
Wizards.
it's Wizards. Sorry, Wizards. Sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Uh, why'd you go to the Wizards?
yeah.
Just
I,
that's
I,
all I have for him.
I guess maybe they want to run Sar at the
You could
four.
play some winning ball for quite a few different teams, and you decide to go to the Wizards. Are you just that worried about money and don't care about winning? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's exactly what it
it's not like
is.
they're building anything there.
I understand that more from Valanciunas' perspective than I do from the Wizards' perspective. But
Yeah, I guess.
Buddy Hield goes to Golden State in a sign and trade. Buddy Hield was like afraid to shoot the ball last year, but he's had a great 3-point percentage in his career. I think there's a lot worse replacements for Klay Thompson than Buddy Hield, so I don't mind it. I think it's a pretty good move for them. I still don't think they're going to be that good,
I
but
agree.
Tyus Jones still available. I think that is a player that definitely could be signed somewhere. Claxton returns to Brooklyn. Love Claxton. I don't think Brooklyn's doing much in general, but they want to hold on to him. I understand it. He's a great player. Almost averages a double double. Um, let's see. Beasley's still available. One of the better 3-point shooters in the league last year, actually, which is crazy. He's still available. Oh, let's see. Okay, what else here? Orlando re-signs both Wagners. Franz got a big deal. Mo got a small deal. What else? We already spoke. You have anything to say else about KCP? I don't love Denver moving on from KCP, but
Right. I don't think they wanted to. It was like I mentioned before, probably to make room for a soon Murray extension and a later Jokic like mega extension, like gonna be the biggest deal in basketball history, probably. I know we just saw Tatum get 63 a year, but Jokic wouldn't shock me to see him get, I don't know, 65, 67. I also don't know what his deal is right now, but maybe 70. I don't know. He'd be worth it.
yeah, he's gonna get a lot. Um, Caleb Martin goes to Philly. I think that's another good move for Philly. I think Caleb Martin's a solid role player. What else? We already spoke on Chris Paul to the Spurs. Let's see. Drummond goes to Philly. That's a good get for Philly. Um, he's of course a great rebounder. Everybody knows that,
Oh,
and I think he's going to be a good piece coming off the bench for Philly. Let's see.
big one we're
Hartenstein.
forgetting. Hartenstein to
Yeah, I was gonna
OKC.
say, yeah, Hartenstein
Big
OKC.
one.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think people are still kind of overrating that one a little bit, but he's a good player. I think he'll be good for OKC. And they didn't get him on a crazy deal or nothing.
He'll be great. He'll be great for what they're going to ask him to do because Chet's going to be your starting five, and Hartenstein, he's going to be one of the more expensive backup bigs in the league. But with what he did for the Knicks last year and their near run, especially when they were just basically hurt the entire way, he was a great defensive player. He was great within 10 feet of the rim. He was just so valuable to them, and having that as your backup five when one of your biggest weaknesses for OKC was struggling to get consistency defensively and rebounding from your backup five, this is the perfect plug and play piece. You're swapping uh Jay Will for Hartenstein and then Giddy for Caruso. This team is locked and loaded, and they could probably win the championship. They might be my second favorite outside of Boston. I think I mentioned that in our last episode, but they're my second favorite to win the title outside of Boston next year.
Let's see. I'm trying to see who else is still available. I don't know. I think that's it. I think we covered just about everyone. Is there any big ones that I'm missing? I think we covered just about everyone off that I got here. You see anything else, or do you think we got about just everything there? Just about
I think
everything,
we
I
got
should say.
basically everything. The only one that I'm kind of seeing is, I guess, Seth Curry, depending on what you think of him. Paul Reed was claimed off of waivers, not ravers, like not even 10 minutes ago when we were
Who'd he go
looking and
to?
recording. Detroit. I think he's entering or just finished his second of 3 years, 24 million.
Yeah, wow.
So he was claimed off of waivers by Detroit.
And wait, I'm assuming Detroit has one of the highest waivers, so I would assume he got claimed pretty
Right.
quickly. Yeah, I think that's about it, man. Guys that are still available, like I already said, Trent Jr., Sadiq Bey, Kyle Lowry are some of the guys available. Not a ton of Eric Gordon, Luke Kennard, not a ton of Dinwiddie, not a ton of great guys, but definitely guys that can make differences on our team, and we'll probably see them signed in the next few weeks here. But that's about it for me.
Yeah, I'm good too.
All right, cool. So that's it for this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. We will be back. Uh, next week talking whatever headlines arise in the NBA, NHL, NFL, etc. Maybe we do another draft. Maybe we talk some Team USA. We're going to talk coming up here soon. But until then, hit all the links in our description for TikTok, Spotify, and all that good stuff. And we will see everybody in the next one.